Slayers, and welcome to another episode of She Slays the Day podcast. I am your host, Dr. Lauryn Brunswick.
And I'm your co-host, not Dr. Kirby Brunswick.
Welcome back to the show, co-host.
Thank you.
I don't know.
It's been a minute. Well, we did
Not really.
We did a thing for Patreon people, but
yes, yep. No, you're just an old person now. You're on all the time, but I feel like I'm going through a stage where I just don't want to be alone. Like, it's more fun chatting with somebody. And the Patreon, I love it, but all of my like chiropractic soloness, I feel like tends to go into that. So like, because once a month I do like an hour long yada yada about chiropractic.
Click the link in the show notes if you want more yada yada.
You know. And so then when it comes to the podcast, I'm like, oh, I don't want to talk about chiropractic by myself. I just want to talk to somebody about something else.
Well, I know a lot about something else.
But is this a chiropractic podcast? Would you say this is a chiropractic? I almost said a pirate podcast.
Are you still podcasting? Yeah, you're still a chiropractic podcast. You have enough like dyed in the wool, awesome chiropractors like Dr. Sharina you just had.
Yeah.
Like
that. No, but like I feel like in the beginning I did a lot more. You know what it is? I haven't gotten a question in a long time. I really like answering specific chiropractic questions. But I feel like, I've done an episode on, we're coming on our 4 years.
Yeah, June will be 4 years, right?
So, it's like, I don't know. I feel like I've talked about a lot of stuff. You know what I don't know is how people who have like a really niche market. So like today we're going to talk about our Airbnb journey, but like there are tons of podcasts out there about Airbnbs. Oh my God. Like, how do you just keep repeating the same stuff?
Well, I mean, with Airbnb, there's lots of like feature updates and stuff too. So anytime they roll out a new one, I feel like there's that. I feel like there's a million horror stories that you could.
Okay, but there are podcasts on podcasting. Like, how are they on episode 300 finding shit to talk about? Amy Porterfield, Jenna Kutcher. Like, I feel like if you look at their podcasts, it is like 10 topics over and over and over again, just in different titles.
That's where guests come in handy, because then you're exploring someone's story and like who they are and what their experience is.
I think it is the ADHD in me that's like, no, I don't want. What do you mean? You want me to talk about opening a clinic or
again
systems and procedures, hiring? Like, go. I think I've talked about that twice already on the podcast. Like, you want it again?
Yeah, people need stuff repeated.
This is why I don't coach. This is why, because people do need it repeated. And I'm like, I said it once. Oh, this is Kirby knows this. This is like a pet peeve of mine. I hate repeating myself.
Very much so.
But I also have the world's worst memory. So of course I don't. I'm given tons of grace if I need a repeating, but no, I don't like repeating myself. So, but anyways, today, what are we talking about today?
We are going to talk about our Airbnb journey. I feel like it's been explored a little bit through intros and stories we've told, but I don't believe, I looked back through, I can't find it. So someone tell me if we're repeating ourselves.
Somebody tell me, because we couldn't find an episode.
But we're going to talk about the specifics of our journey through buying a property, fixing it up, putting it on Airbnb, the mistakes, the wins, what we learned, what we would do different, all that stuff.
Yep, absolutely. Anything going on? Any updates in life? I literally, the only thing going on in my life is the book series.
Lauryn learned to read.
Well, so apparently somebody sent me a message. They're like, oh my God, I'm just listening to this episode. And you said like, I don't have time for nonfiction. I'm into fairy romance. I don't know what comes out of my mouth. That's why anytime somebody like is like, oh my God, this episode, your intro. And I'm like, what did I say? What did I say? So many strengths, but remembering is not one of them. But yeah, no. Okay. So for those who are maybe not following along on Instagram as much, I fell down a rabbit hole that is A Court of Thorns and Roses. And that was like a year ago.
Mm-hmm.
And
I read some of them with you.
I made you read all of them.
Oh, yeah. Those 3.
Yeah, that's right. You didn't read the 4th one that got real pornographic. But the first 3 were more like adventure with love and fairies. Not fairies, but what do they call
Fae people?
Fae, magic.
Yeah.
Anyways, so if you're looking for a good fiction read this summer, highly recommend A Court of Thorns and Roses. Then it's like 3 or 4 books. But then I fell into a depression. It's called the book Hangover. I'd never had it before. So now I'm reading the series by the same author that she had actually written first, but it's young adult. So like,
I mean, one positive is you got to read a book with Charlie and go on her book podcast, which is cool, which we'll put a link to that too if you want to hear Lauryn and our amazing 11-year-old discuss a book.
Well, what's really funny is in that process, so I'm like, all right, I'm going to read this book. Charlie likes reading, but I don't want to read her stuff because I'm a slightly selfish person. And so I'm like, oh, maybe this is, since it's young adult, mature enough for Charlie. And so we look it up and it's PG-13. And I'm like, she's 11. Same difference. Okay, so let's just say that I had to explain to Charlie what the word rape means and virgin. Yeah. So apparently there is a difference between, and it didn't go into details.
And your go-go style is like, let's start reading this book together. Well, you're like 10 pages ahead of her.
In my defense, we looked it up. We both looked it up and it said, besides like in chapter wherever where there is some, what did they say? Some passionate kisses. I don't even know if it said that. Like, yes, this is an appropriate book for a kid. Not a kid, but like whatever. Anyways, there's the difference. PG-13. I just remember being 11 and like a PG-13 movie was like, oh, I got this. And I wasn't traumatized.
Sure you weren't.
Anyways, just to clarify, there is not like the R word, not like a scene or anything like that. It's like a one sentence where they allude to something in the past. But anyways, I was just like, oh crap. Okay, she's like a chapter behind me. And so yeah, we got to read that book together.
One other bonus of you reading voraciously now is I don't feel guilty about.
I thought you were going to go a different way with that. And I was like, Kirby, we are not.
There are other benefits to you reading this type of book.
Yes, the young adult one, there's not that benefit. But the benefit of me reading a lot
is I don't feel guilty that like normally in the past, like if I was like on a Saturday going like, oh, I just want to sit outside and read for an hour, you would be like buzzing around doing things. And then I feel guilty that I wasn't doing things and just reading. And now you read a ton. And then I get to go like, cool, I get to read now.
I feel like worse of a person now that I am addicted. Like I am not folding laundry.
It always gets folded eventually.
By you.
Yeah, I don't mind.
I'm just saying, like, it's hard. Like, I like loving a book. I love liking a book. Whatever.
Well, if you really want to fold laundry while you read, do what I do and just listen to a ton of audiobooks.
That's true.
Because that's what I'm doing while I'm folding laundry.
That's true. Okay. All right. Anyways, this is not the subject matter that we are supposed to be talking about today. So we have a listener highlight. This one is on Apple Podcasts. So if we have any new listeners, or if you have not had a chance to review us on Apple, I would love for you to be my next listener highlight. So this is 5 stars, and it's from Dr. Die.
Yeah. Okay.
Cairo. Full of truth, wit, and wisdom. I have wit.
You're so witty.
How is wit different than funny?
Wit is more clever, I think, in my mind. So like it might not be a joke in like a public setting, but it might be like a semi-humorous aside that was very clever.
I'm trying to figure out whether I would be described as funny or witty. I think witty.
I don't know. I think you're more funny than witty. I think of like when I think...
feel like I'm offended.
You shouldn't be. Like, I think Tom Segura is funny. I think like Oscar Wilde is witty. Like, I think of it as more like literary.
I think that I'm realizing I'd prefer to be funny as you're saying I'm witty, I'm feeling offended. And I'm
I
like,
said you're more funny than witty. You said,
oh, I think I was just offended by anything.
just trigger warning.
Never mind. I'm just offended that you said I'm not both. Okay. Anyways, Dr. Di. As a small town cash only startup office, this podcast was a must for me. I'm pretty sure that Dr. Lauryn is speaking right to me like 99% of the time. It's really nice to get advice from someone that has been where I am. Thanks, Doc. Yeah. And if you are a small startup, or not small, well, if you're a startup, I highly recommend joining the Roadmap to Success Patreon tier, because that is really what the Patreon is for. We kind of, when we had the multi-passionate chiropreneur going, we realized like only a certain number of our followers were like going to benefit from that, and then others wanted to work with me, and I'm like, well, startup stuff. Okay, so that's why we made that. So it's cheap, affordable, $25 a month. And if you are a startup, and you could also just go back and listen to all of the episodes that I've done.
Yeah, but I mean, it really distills it down into like the information for people who are looking for the truly like running a chiropractic clinic content, and it's all there. So like,
because we already said you're not going to be getting it from me anymore. Apparently I'm bored talking about it.
So when you subscribe, you get access to all the past ones too. So you can binge, like if you subscribe today, you could binge 5 episodes or whatever since we've started the Roadmap to Success program, and then follow along each month. And you get to ask questions and you get to attend the live calls. Like, I think that's the thing that people could get the most out of if they're truly looking to like work with you.
Yes. Anyways, that wasn't supposed to be a promotion there. So thanks, Dr. Di. And if you have not left a review for the podcast, it would mean the world to me and my co-host.
Totally.
Okay. Set us up for a prayer, and let's dig into the Airbnb world.
All right. Take a deep breath, relax a little bit. Dear God, thank you for the adventure that is this life. Thank you for the opportunities that you've put in front of us and putting the courage in us to be able to step forward and do them. Help us to internalize the lessons that we've learned, that so much of the best things we do in life are often the hardest things. And the point of this existence is not to seek comfort, but to build something and to grow with the people around us. In your name we pray. Amen.
Okay, so let's start with a little background story. So
do you want to start in Palm Springs?
That's where I was going to start.
That was exactly 1 year ago today. My Google Photos reminded me that we were in Palm Springs.
Oh my God.
So 1 year ago today, we did not own an Airbnb. We had no plans of owning an
Okay,
Airbnb.
well, that's not true. It depends on exactly what day, because I am drunk in a pool at a awesome Airbnb in Palm Springs. Like, I mean, Palm Springs is like one of those cities where their Airbnbs bring it. And say to Kirby, we should have an Airbnb. And he goes something along the lines of like, yeah, that's in the plan. I'm like waiting for the housing market. Yeah, something I'm preparing. Yes. I don't know. In your mind, was that like a 2 to 5 year plan?
Yeah, I figured we would really save to do the down payment. We would assess properties. We'd look for a real steal. We would, run the numbers and go like, what's the best use of our money? What's the biggest cash on cash return? Investor-y stuff.
Yeah,
well thought out, planned,
smart with your money kind of stuff. So then so we're at the airport coming home from Palm Springs, and my brain seeks constant dopamine. And so usually what I do is plan the next trip on our way home.
Yes.
Like without fail. But this time I was doing something much more expensive, and I was looking on Zillow. Oh my God. I saw a meme the other day that was like, can Zillow just accept what they actually are and allow comments? Nobody's there to actually look for houses. It's just, or for like buying. It's just like looking at houses and judging people for, you want how much for what? Anyways. So I'm on Zillow, and it started with our town, and I'm just like, oh, what's for sale? And a house that I've always loved and would run by was for sale. And I was like, oh my God, Kirby, side thing, this house is for sale. And he goes like, well, we can look at it. So you were like just looking at it for fun.
Yeah. Yeah, I figured because it cost 4 times as much as our current house. And I figured like, well, we're not going to do this, but I want to see what the inside of it looks like. The pictures look pretty cool.
And
Let's
it
go
was
take
on
a
a
look.
lake.
Yep,
And
it's
we
on a lake.
currently don't live on a
We
lake.
currently
That's a
live 2
really
blocks from a lake, but that's not
Ew.
close enough.
Okay, it's not, and you know it.
I know.
And that's an important part of the story is that like I really wanted to be on a lake. And that was a dream that I woke up with that morning.
Let's turn our life upside down.
So we go look at the house. It's a major fixer-upper, and I'm like, let's do it. And Kirby's not sold. The real estate agent says like, yeah, but I think we could sell your house for a ton. So then he's a little more sold. Then we're having a conversation about like all the things we would need to do to get our house ready to sell. And Kirby says like, I don't want to do it. I love our house. I didn't see this coming because this is like
it wasn't the thing we've
ago.
ever talked about before.
Yep. And I don't want to just go into a more expensive house. With a more expensive mortgage, I pictured us having a house on a lake that we could like rent, and it's an investment property. And I was like, well, okay, I don't want to drag you kicking and screaming out of this house. I understand. How about we just continue both paths? We'll look for an Airbnb if the right one comes up.
Mm-hmm.
Is this?
Yep. In general.
Okay. So then I am back on Zillow and looking for lake houses that we can Airbnb, and we find one, but we're going to Mile High. And so we messaged the real estate agent because this is last summer. This is when like shit was not on the market for long.
Yeah. Things were going really quick, and a lot of times people were getting above asking.
And this property was sold and then was back on the market, which is always a good sign.
Yeah. A little nervous about when that inspection was going to come in.
So we are like, hey, can we look at this when we get back? And the real estate agent was like, if it's still on the market, sure.
Mm-hmm.
So we go to Mile High. Shout out to Mile High. It was great. And then on our way home, or on our drive home from the airport, Kirby slept, and I listened to the host coach.
Yep, I believe that's what it's called. I'll put a
Shout
link
out to
it.
that book.
Yep.
I listened to that book while driving, and the melodic, what's it called when you like hypnotize?
Yeah.
I was hypnotized by the author's words that an Airbnb is the greatest thing in the world, and we are totally doing this. So
you must have skipped the chapter when they talked about like valuing the house right for the
totally. Actually, I do remember it. He says like 250,000 is like
the sweet spot for.
Well, this house was not 250,000. Let's just say that. So we go look at it and jump to the thing. We buy it.
Yep. So to explain the house a little bit, it's a pretty cool house, but it's fairly old. Built in like the 60s or 70s.
But not like charming.
But
old?
not charming old, like in that like it's a little dated, vinyl siding. A lot of the work was done by the previous owners, which were old people. So, that we're walking around with construction
rumor
people.
Is she died in the house. And when I say rumor, I mean literally our neighbor told us she saw them taking a body bag out of the house. So
it's haunted. There's a plus. Now we saged the shit out of that. No, but it's on 1.6 acres. It's on a really nice lake. There's a big yard that goes down to, well, there is now. But when we looked at it, it hadn't been lived in 2 or 3 years. And the entire backyard had trees everywhere, everything grown up. The shoreline had a big like berm of dirt from ice pushing it up. So it was like we could see the potential. But see the potential. You could see the potential more than I could, definitely. But relative to fully done properties that were, a mile away, still on that same lake, those were $600,000, $700,000, $800,000, which would have been like, no way.
No.
Like we literally couldn't have come up with the down payment for them.
Right. So we got this one.
From first seeing it in like the first week of June, we closed July 1st.
And Palm Springs was the middle of May.
Mm-hmm.
So shit moves fast around here. Apparently Kirby's 3 to 5 year. And I think while I was drunk talking to you in Palm Springs, we were talking about like maybe Orlando or like.
Yeah, like let's start the process of thinking about how to do this the best way.
Which, by the way, I do not recommend an Airbnb in Orlando. Like, you have to pretty much be Disney in order to make it there. But anyways, so there's the backstory. We buy this house, and then it's July 4th. We closed on July 2nd. And up in Wisconsin, you do not have a year-round or a full year to make money on Airbnbs.
Yeah, you can rent it out in the winter, but
can.
the surge pricing and when people want to stay is the summer. So we set the ambitious goal of we are going to have this rented out or starting to rent out like August 3rd.
But if you work backwards, before your first renter can be there, they have to find your Airbnb. And then before they find your Airbnb, you have to take photos of your Airbnb. So it's not like you can throw it up there while you're working. You can't take photos until like a room is done. So it was like we had 2.5 to 3 weeks to flip this bitch as much as possible, take nice photos, put them on, and get some renters in. And somehow, like,
lot of help. I mean, we just worked day and night. You had your mom and stepdad basically come live up with us. July. Yep, and just do everything. He's a contractor, so he was doing a lot of the fix it. She helped you with a lot of the interior and design stuff.
Like a non-licensed contractor, basically.
Yeah. I got to borrow some awesome tools from my dad's friends. My dad's a farmer and has a bunch of farmer friends who have stuff like a backhoe. So I got to use a backhoe for free, which was fun.
Now, what I will say, so the month of July, I basically told my team I will be Zooming in for meetings. I will be at these shifts that I'm adjusting. I think we were really well staffed for chiropractors. So I think I took an additional shift off a week. And I said, for the month of July, now, not like when I talk about like different times of my leadership where I kind of dropped the ball on being a good leader and got like sidetracked. This was one of them. It was not the best thing to do to our team to spring on them. I think they felt a little unsupported, but it was like 5 weeks. So it was like, oh my gosh, give me a break.
Yeah. And I mean, it wasn't just you of like, I was much less available to fix things and solve problems and support and do design stuff. It was just kind of like, figure it out, which is helpful in some ways. I think some people learned some Canvas stuff and took on some initiative that I really, really appreciate that they did that. But at the same time, I felt pretty ashamed after the month of like, I have barely talked to any of you and I have definitely not been checking my messages or helping you.
Right. So anyways, there's lessons to be learned there if you are going to basically take a month off your practice on a last minute Airbnb that you bought. So
do you want to talk like the design and the aesthetic and like why we did what we did?
Yeah. So we were coming off the Palm Springs Airbnb a whole 6 weeks earlier, and they just made bold choices, really bold choices that you would never do for your own house, but it was okay because we didn't have to live there. So it was like, for instance, they had navy blue wallpaper with hot pink tigers on it in the bathroom. Like, you know what? I wouldn't choose that for my home.
Yeah, but it was cool.
And so it definitely made me realize that go bolder than you think. And people can stay there and actively not like a design decision you made, but they don't actually care. So like they would go, because there were things there that would go like, I do not like that photo. Well, time for margarita.
Yeah.
Like, didn't matter.
Well, and I think it's interesting too of like when you're looking at it, I think of it like in hotels. If you have something that's equal priced or similar priced and one has something cool, something Instagrammable, something that stands out, that's the thing that catches your eye, especially when people are scrolling through 30 choices of very similar type properties and very similar type rooms of like, if it's tan walls and a king bed, and you have the choice between that place and a place that has, seagulls flying through the air and
Like
some
literal?
no, I'm saying like
I was like, I
wallpaper
would
or like
not choose the
no,
seagull
you would definitely
house.
not choose the seagull house. But no, it's that thing that differentiates that gets people to stop their scroll. And I think you did a fantastic job with that at the
Yeah.
house.
Well, so I mean, the alternative is you pour money into making it like gorgeous luxury.
Yeah.
Like, so if it was a new build, if it was a brand new build, we probably would have gotten away with just everything being new and nice and clean. But it wasn't a new build. And so we needed to slap some pig on a lipstick on a pig.
Yeah. So we had like pink carpet in the master bedroom or
With
in the
no
one
money
bedroom.
to redo the flooring.
Yep. Normal, like tan carpet in the living room and just white walls and like a normal stone fireplace, not like a fancy, like field stone hand done, like normal kit fireplace.
Yeah. So you can go, you'll include
Yeah, I'll include the link to the listing so you can get pictures of the house and stuff.
You can see because this is a podcast, so we can't show you. But wallpaper's expensive, bro.
But worth it.
Little side note on wallpaper. So Spoonflower I spent hours going through wallpaper decisions or choices and trying to pick which one. But anyways, there's 3 different kinds. There is the kind that you apply your paste. There's the kind that the paste is already there,
but you got to put it in water.
You just have to water activate it. And then there's peel and stick. We used all 3 different kinds in the podcast, and my preference
in the project, you mean?
In the podcast. In the project. My favorite is the water activated one. For sure. Hands down. The peel and stick is nice if you're doing like a small area. So for instance, we did the peel and stick like as a backsplash in it's like the 18 inches backsplash in the kitchen, and that was fine there. But I actually like being able to like maneuver it a little bit, and once it sticks, you don't. So anyways, so if you're in the wallpaper market, that is my recommendation.
Cool.
Okay. And then honestly, again, because we had spent way too much money on a house without any like nest egg prepared to do this, it was just really a lot of garage sales, Facebook Marketplace, putting together, but not wanting it to look hodgepodge.
Yeah.
So it was a ton of work. If you have money, like, you know what's easier? Just buying a $3,000 leather couch from Crate and Barrel. That's easier, but we didn't have that up. We did not have that. So.
Yeah, a lot of Facebook Marketplace, a lot of garage sales, but keeping in mind the aesthetic that we wanted, which is, I don't even know how I would describe it. It's like...
It's eclectic.
Eclectic, yeah. We mixed some traditional like cabin-y type elements because it is a house in the Northwoods on a lake.
Really.
There's little like the old pictures and like the little old toys and trinkets and stuff.
There's that taxidermy frog playing a horn.
Yeah. But then having more modern things like an accent wall in the bedroom, an accent wall in the living room. We wanted to go with the idea of, what's going to pop when people are scrolling, what's Instagrammable, and not having any space look just common.
Right. Yep. Very dog friendly. Oh, this is the thing. If you're thinking about an Airbnb, one of the biggest questions that you may need to decide is whether you want to accept dogs or not. So dogs are like one of the number one filters that Airbnb claims that's been for years. Is people like their dogs and they want to travel with their dogs.
And we're in a setting where it would make sense that people would want to bring their dogs. So we, and this gets back to a kind of a key thing of like, we had our ideal renter in mind the whole time of like, we did not want this to be a party house for bachelor parties to come and spend time on the lake. We wanted it to be more family friendly. We expected it to be rented by generally people like us who have a couple
maybe
kids,
like
have a dog.
Yeah.
So we decided to go the route of being dog friendly because our dog was going to be there when we were using it, when it wasn't being rented. So we knew there was going to be some residual pet hair. But then
she's a golden retriever and like, oh my gosh. Yeah.
Yeah, you can vacuum everything, but I think hair fell down into the air ducts and then would redistribute itself after we cleaned. But no, so we had that in mind from the beginning and kind of catered the entire aesthetic and the entire experience when we were doing the outside work too, of like, what would we like as amenities? So there's dog treats, there's bowls for feeding, there's balls and throwers. So like we realize what people would want to do on a vacation to this particular property.
Yeah. So as far as choosing the location, okay. We didn't really, it was a lack of options because everything moved really fast. I like where we landed, but I don't know that like if we were doing this again, I don't know, would you recommend that?
So here's what I would do if we were going to do this again. I would use some tools like AirDNA that you can plug in your zip code and look at the properties that are on Airbnb. It has a bunch of background data on like what the occupancy rates are, what are the average nightly rentals. So you can generally look at how much revenue most of the properties in your area are generating. So that's the start of your search. So you can balance that out.
In an ideal world, you start with, we want an Airbnb. What is the best way to go about this to get financial reimbursement?
Yeah. I mean, ideally, if you're trying to run it as a business, you want to be cash flow positive each year. So if you buy a $500,000 place, you might have a $4,000 a month mortgage. Can you look at those stats and go, okay, it's going to definitely be over 4,000 because that doesn't include electricity and utilities and all that stuff, cleaning fees. So you want to think about, what's the mortgage going to look like? What are those extra expenses going to be? And then use that data from something like AirDNA to go like, okay, this actually does make sense while we're building equity. Now, what I've seen and what I've learned since is it's more the mid-level properties that you can still rent out for $250 a night, but you only spent between $150 and $250 on them. Now that's not an option of getting on the lake where we are. You cannot get something for $200,000
not on this lake, but we could have gotten a plot of land and put a tiny home on it. So here's the thing is I think there are two groups of people thinking about an Airbnb. There's people who want an investment, and there's people who want a second home in a location they love.
And they just want some help.
Kirby was one of those people, and I was the other.
Yeah. But now that we have it, we do use it. We're going out there this weekend. That's going to be great because it's rented all summer. So we're not going to have a chance to stay out there as our family. But so that's kind of where we settled, is in this in-between point of this year. We'll probably get very close, if not a little bit over, covering the mortgage. And that's because we had some construction delays when we remodeled. Next year, I think it will be a combination of we'll get to use it and it will actually generate some money, not as much money as it could. It is hard to say no to the money though.
So like right now, as it's sitting, the last week of August and Labor Day weekend is open. Like,
we're going to make so much money on that though.
Oh man, should we take it off Airbnb? Should we do it? Should we just be selfish and take that for ourselves? But that's like a $3,000 week.
Yep.
And it's so like, it's really hard to say no to that money. So we're probably not going to.
You can take it and go to a smaller Airbnb.
Hey, She Slayers. I just wanted to take a moment to ask you, have you heard of PX? I don't know. Have I mentioned them before? So they're practically everywhere these days, and I am so excited to have them as a sponsor on our show because they are on a mission that I can seriously get behind. So Dr. Tony and his team have designed a pediatric, prenatal, and family chiropractic training program that has online and live event training opportunities to learn step-by-step the science, clinical protocols, and business systems behind building a thriving pediatric and family chiropractic practice. Now, here's what's extra cool. It doesn't matter if you're a student, startup, or practicing chiropractor. I mean, I am a member and I've been in practice for over 12 years now. Each and every bit of their training is applicable to you and where you're at. I've been a part of PX for a while now, and I can say that there's no one better in the space to lead you and to lead this profession than Dr. Tony and his team. If you want to take your practice to the next level in serving more kiddos and families in your community, then you must check out PX. I will drop a link in the show notes so you can head over to thepediatricexperience.com and let them know She Slays the podcast sent you there for a special little bonus. Hey, She Slayers, I have partnered with Well Aligned and Above Down Apparel to give all of my listeners something really special. So listen up, don't skip. A free premium t-shirt. Okay, you get a free t-shirt. So just head over to wellaligned.com/she slays to claim your listener offer. That's all you got to do. Above Down has the coolest and most comfy chiropractic tees that showcase your personality. My favorite is the Mabel. I love it. They're super soft and a great conversation starter if you do seek conversation with, your patients. We call it table talk. What more can you ask for? So I've also been using well-aligned materials for years to educate my patients. They have high-quality ROF folders, patient handouts, office forms, posters, and a ton more. So why recreate the wheel when there's a perfectly designed communication tool ready for you to help educate and inform? Head over to wellaligned.com/she slays to claim your free t-shirt. And I'll drop a link in the show notes so you can check it out. I'd like to take a moment to thank one of our primary sponsors of the podcast, Insight CLA. The Insight tech moves the message off the spine and into the nervous system, where the magic of the adjustments can be measured and tracked. Everyone from newborns to seniors are being scanned in my practice and in thousands of other practices like ours, so they can be examined and inspired to choose chiropractic care. It's like an instant referral machine because the scans are so visible and informative. Like, what patient wouldn't want to know how their nervous system is performing? The staff at CLA are ready to take care of you and answer any questions you may have. They also have an incredible online academy that can help train everyone in the office and help them to feel confident on how to get perfect scans and how to interpret the results. We have been using the Insight technology in our clinics for over 7 years now, and it is a complete game changer for conversion, retention, and patient education. Click the link below in the show notes as She Slays listeners get preferred pricing and hundreds of dollars off their purchase. Yeah.
So this is a big part of so we did do a renovation on it the first winter we had it, and a big part of that was actually a good business decision. So we had already bought the property, and we realized it had an unfinished basement, so it was like 1,500 square feet of finished house.
Yeah, because it was only a 1-bedroom, 1-bath.
One bedroom,
with
one
an
bath.
unfinished walkout basement.
So when we went and thought about like, who do we want to rent this to, we thought families and maybe like a couple families. And we had an unfinished basement, so we added on the entire basement, which has a kid's room with bunk beds, and then a big room that has 2 queen beds that can fit adults, another bathroom down there, another living room. So we spent that $50,000, and now we more than doubled, or we doubled our nightly rate at least, and for summer months it's sometimes tripled. So that $50,000 actually started to make it a good investment because we're bringing in enough that could actually support it. We would have had to been at like 75 or 80% occupancy with just the upstairs.
And what website is the one that tells you, is it Price Labs or AirDNA that tells you like the normal occupancy rate for that area?
AirDNA tells you the normal occupancy rate, but Price Labs is another tool that we use that is tying into all the background data on Airbnb that auto smart prices. So it knows like what dates it should charge more for, and you can still go in and manually change them. But when we put it in, like if we had a normal $350 a night rate, it knew like the weekend before 4th of July and the weekend after 4th of July are $700 a night. And it set that.
Yeah.
Of saying like, this is what you can get for it. Everything else is already booked, and they booked at, twice normal rates.
Right. So it's hard because when people say like that, what people want to do is like, so would you do it again? And it's like, yeah, yes, I love having this home for our family. We could not have afforded to, so we could have afforded to sell our house and move into a home like this, but I don't know what's the but there.
We'd have been way out of town. So all the girls' school stuff would have been a half-hour drive to everything. I'd be fine with that. I mean, I grew up with it, so I'm used to like
Is that the only reason we don't live there?
No, it's not. Well, especially when we bought it, it was not set up for our life of like, it's a little smaller than our primary house. We would have been we'd just been farther away from all the stuff. You'd have been commuting to work I know you
Um,
say you don't mind, but like adding an extra 20 minutes to your drive every day, both ways would have changed things.
All right. Well, anyways, Kirby's not selling me on why we aren't living in our Airbnb right now. But I think that if we looked at the amount of money that we're in and we were truly going, let's make this, we have that amount of money to spend, let's make it as cash flow positive as possible, as fast, what would you have done differently?
I think if we took that same amount of money, we probably could partner with my parents on their farm because they have a farm on a small lake, build tiny homes that can only fit like 2 people. So it's
Yeah,
like
that's like
couples getaway. You can still get $150 to $200 a night for a cute little tiny home.
Oh, and don't provide electricity and water, and you can probably charge $250.
Yeah,
Like
people are crazy.
yurts are like for real a thing right now. So if you aren't looking for something that your family needs to go into, the like best thing happening right now, or like, the really great niche is those like find
Yeah,
yourself a
Airbnb highlights them. They're called like unique stays or
Mhm.
like glamping or whatever.
Yeah.
People will still pay a ton for that. And so yeah, that's what I would do is probably tiny homes. I would probably do electricity and water just to appeal to more people. But we could, for what we paid, we could probably build 3 or 4 of those, and
Mhm.
each one of those could generate $200 a night with fairly clean turnover too, because that's the other part about hosting
Ugh.
families and having dog friendly stuff is our cleaning schedule in a large house is fairly rigorous now. It takes a long time. We have to pay for that every time versus if a couple comes for a couple nights, and there's only one bed to change and it's small, so they're not going to bring in a ton of
Mhm.
stuff. That's an easier turnaround.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say that people do not have any idea the number one headache besides like you need to pay for this house now, and like worrying about your booking is the cleaning. The cleaning is the hardest part. I remember because we were planning on me just cleaning it, Kirby and me cleaning it for the first month or two because we put it on the market beginning of August and we were expecting like, oh, maybe 2 or 3 people will rent it. Well, it completely booked up August and most of September and early October.
Yeah, right away.
And so it was like the third time I was cleaning it and I was starting to become like legit OCD about it. Because you realize that like as you're making the bed, okay, and it's like white sheets, if a single one of my hair accidentally like
And you shed.
well, I have long fake hair, okay? It falls out. It's not my fault that whoever owned this hair before me, it doesn't stay in. Anyways, so like it's very possible that like as I'm making the bed, one of my hairs could fall on there. And what if I don't see it? And that's like so gross.
Oh,
Like
they like
crawling
peel
into
back the
bed
bed
and it's
and
like,
then
ooh, there's a hair. Like it's that level of where you're like, oh yeah, that would be gross. Like, oh, just every single thing. You are cleaning this house more than you clean. Like it's like a spring cleaning. Every single time you are looking for smudges, hair, just all of these things. And then the worst part is, besides the OCD that starts to develop and neuroticism, then you come home to your house that is dirty as F. You just spent 4 hours obsessively worrying about every smudge, every speck of dust, every like little thing on every glass. Because that's the thing is part of the cleaning is we pull out all of the plates and just make sure that nobody accidentally put a plate away.
yeah, because a
dirty.
guest could wash it and it could have something on it and they go, good enough, and toss it back in. Like the next guest
You're
doesn't
looking at
understand that.
every wine glass to make sure that there's not residual lipstick. Like it's intense. It's really intense. And then you just come home to your shithole and you're like, my God, does anybody else care that we live in a garbage fire?
Well, and the reason that you do have to clean to that level is, and I don't think anyone who hasn't hosted knows this, is like Airbnb is really, really nice to the guests, but are brutal on the owners. So when you're rating an Airbnb and you go like, yeah, it was pretty good. I mean, it was mostly clean. 3 or 4 stars, like a couple little things. Like that's how normal people would normally rate something. But with Airbnb, if you don't have a 5-star rating, or I think you have to average at least a 4.8, you aren't eligible for Superhost, which means your listing gets shown farther down. So when you want to be a Superhost, which everyone aspires to be so that you can get your listing seen, you have to just constantly be looking for every little thing. And Airbnb's rating system isn't normal. It's not like 4 out of 5 is usually pretty great. I've stayed at pretty good hotels and been like, yeah, it was 4 out of 5. You need to get 5-star reviews from every one of your guests. And if you don't, it hurts you.
Yeah. Yeah. So and then the other thing is like as a business owner, as business owners, we had spent 12 years like where this is a part of our identity. If somebody doesn't love this, we take this personal, we make changes. And then you carry that into this where somebody gives you a 4-star and they're like, I don't know.
Yeah, the house was great. We had an amazing time. There was a tuft of dog hair near the lamp in the, sitting room. And
4 stars. And you're just like, oh my God, I'm a terrible person. I'm doing a bad job at this. And so, so there's been some reckoning that's needed to happen of like, listen, this is not our day job and we're going to do our damn best. Also, so this is a big thing to think about where you're looking is if you're in like northern Wisconsin or in rural areas, finding cleaning people is difficult.
Yes.
So like if you're going to rent or buy an Airbnb in Madison, there are cleaning services, professional cleaning services that will come in and whip through and do all this stuff.
Probably experienced hotel cleaners who know all the steps and all the tricks.
Yeah.
But
like some woman named Jay.
Yeah. Our neighbor.
60 years old.
She does a good job.
She does a great job. But she's a real human. And, like things are going to get missed. And, so it's just, and that's a hard thing to communicate to your guests too, where it's like, I know you came from Chicago and you expected, but I mean, one of the people, I think they still gave us 5 stars, but was voiced frustration that they found a cobweb in a door frame. Like, on the hinge side, and she sent me a picture and it was a cobweb that was about the size of half of a dollar bill. And it was in the hinge side and it was like
in a cabin in northern Wisconsin.
Yeah. I'm sorry. I don't know what to tell you. There are spiders there and we do our best to ask them to leave you alone, but they apparently hated you. Mouse turds, like just stuff that you're like, yeah, it is a cabin. So it's almost to our fault that we made it cute because like if you would have just been like, this is what it is.
Yeah, I do have a friend who rents out his cabin really near us and it's very rustic and it's just one of those like been in the family 80 years cabins with old mismatched furniture. But people see that, I mean, like, so that is another key point is you have to be very clear on your listing. And that's the lesson that we've kind of learned too, is if it's listed in your house rules or in your listing, and then people complain about it on Airbnb, if you can show that there was a reasonable expectation for them to expect that, then Airbnb can remove some of those negative reviews. So if we say we are a dog-friendly home, we do have it professionally cleaned every time between guests, but being a dog-friendly home, there may be a stray hair here or there. Then if someone said like, I found a hair, we'd be like, that was in the listing. So it's just a rule to protect some of the owners or the hosts. So if someone comes and you said like, I don't have AC, and then someone gives you a 2-star review because there's no AC, it's like, that's not my problem. That's your problem.
Right. Property management companies, would you do one if...
The ones around here that I've seen, one, I saw several negative reviews. And 2, it was not as clear of what they would do and what they would cost. Right. So I thought it was like they take 10% of revenue and they take care of everything. What they do is they take 10% of revenue and then help you find a lawn service and help you find a cleaning service, which I'm sure they're getting a kickback on.
I think there are property management companies that take closer to 30% and they do all the marketing, all the cleaning, all the everything.
And that's where for us personally, it didn't make sense because, they go like, well, here's the advantages. We'll have a professional photographer come in and shoot your space and we'll have professional marketing copywriters write your stuff. It's like, well, we do that.
Yeah.
So for us, it didn't make sense. But if I was having something managed like on the other side of the country, like
then you have to.
then you have to. But we also had someone in the multi-passionate chiropreneur who said they have one in Orlando, and they found a real estate agent who
It
hoped
wasn't Orlando. It was.
I thought it was in Florida somewhere.
It's in Florida. Well,
Oh, okay.
There are more
Not-
cities in
There's
Florida.
only Orlando. The mouse is all. No, but they had someone who like they had a real estate agent who knew people who ran a management company. And so they had kind of a soup to nuts setup where it was like, buy this place, go in with these people, and you'll stay there when you stay there. And then
weren't we gonna talk to her? Because she said like there's a real estate group that like if you're like, I want to buy an Airbnb, there's like specific realtors that exist for like
who understand the industry and have the connections. Yeah.
And why were we gonna talk to one? Oh, for Cabo.
Yep.
That's right. We were going to talk. I was like, wait, were we looking at another Airbnb? Are we lunatics?
We were thinking long-term planning, what to do with our money to have that.
Long-term, like 6 to 12 months, right?
Jesus Christ. We are still paying for this one. We're still paying for the borrowed money for the down payment.
You move slow.
No, I'm trying to think of other things because like from the standpoint of what else was a surprise or something that.
It's just people. Like you gotta deal with people. Like it's I don't know. You like people? I don't.
You kind of learn as you go too of as people complain or as they have an issue, then it's like a business of like you find out where the problems are when you're faced with them and then you try to find a system to fix it. So, we had someone who couldn't change the propane tank when it went out on the gas grill, and it was one of our first guests. So I was driving out there at 9:30 at night to change it. Then the next between stays, we shot a video of how to change the propane grill and put a link to it in the house manual so that hopefully I'm not having to do that.
Yep. Systems and procedures. So you just view it like a business and yeah. Okay. What else do we need to cover?
One thing that we didn't mention is, and a lot of this is in the host coach. So I would recommend if you're thinking about this to read a couple books at least on Airbnb to get different philosophies. But one thing that we did is we are only on Airbnb. We thought about doing Airbnb and VRBO and Booking.com, but you want to feed the algorithm. And if Airbnb is only getting a third of your bookings, it's assuming that you have low traffic for that site or that you're not open very often. But when you feed Airbnb all your stuff, then they know that you are at 70% occupancy. They know all the traffic for your place is coming there versus dividing your traffic among 2 or 3 or 4 sources. And then they go like, oh, we're not going to show this one often because it doesn't get looked at that often.
Right. Another thing that if you are considering, I do recommend you spend a month living inside of the Airbnb Facebook group.
Oh my God. Those monsters.
Okay. So it is the most vile group of people I've ever seen.
I think some people are there just to troll. Like,
oh my God. I mean, there are people on there that are like taking this way too seriously. Like, and for all I know, maybe they're making like millions of dollars and like this is absolutely their day job. And they're like pissed off that anybody would not take this as seriously. Like, people expect hotel level customer, like it's insane.
I saw one the other day where it seemed like a fairly naive host, new to it, said like, I just had a guest leave. The sheets were stained. She probably didn't mean to, but like that time of the month. And so should I send a request for new sheets, like $50 or whatever? And the range of responses came from like, that's part of the business. You eat that cost. Welcome to Airbnb hosting, idiot. To like, any decent person would have gone out and bought you new sheets before you had to even ask. They were just, no one is kind there and everyone is talking to you
but
like
if you
you're
do
an idiot.
read through the comments, occasionally there will be one person that will be like, here's what I would do. And it's like, all right, thank you. That was actually helpful. But the reason that we stay is because you do learn like that is a reasonable thing of like, am I just supposed to eat that cost or should I send a request for funds? Is this like this person just sent me this message? How do I respond to this? And so I feel like reading through troubleshooting, you do learn this world a little bit of like, because there are legit scams out there.
Yep.
I've seen a couple different scams where like people will come, stay a week, and then afterwards report that there were like bed bugs, and they want a full week's
Yeah, they want their stay comped, but
complete.
they don't complain until the last day, or they say something little in the middle, and then they use that as like how many days off can you give me so that I can give you a 5-star review? Like people who know the game can take advantage of you. Thankfully, we hadn't had to deal with that too much.
Not really, but yeah, that story we have definitely told.
Yeah.
That was go back to last summer and you can hear about our 4th guest and the
How we had to
craziness.
basically tell them they could leave if they didn't like it, and they did. And so we gave them the 1 free night stay, but they would have stayed for 3 more days and then probably given us a low review and wanted money off.
Yeah. So yeah, if you if you're worried about dealing with people, go to that Facebook group and you will get to see all the type of because we're just waiting for it.
Mhm.
I mean, you deal with 30 bookings a year, you're gonna have some crazies.
You're going to have some stuff break. You're going to have some stuff go wrong in your house that you have to fix. Thankfully, it's going to happen this
You
summer.
might have a murder.
No, that's not what I was going. I know that you have. That's not where I was
I told
going.
them that story, so I don't need to retell it.
No, I'm saying this summer we're going to have, because there are storms and there's a bunch of trees, we're going to have the power go out while a guest is there.
Mhm.
So that's something we
And
need
then
to.
we're gonna murder them.
It's the perfect crime. So we might be buying a generator on short notice.
Do you want to talk about your so one of the things that Airbnb is really pushing right now is add-ons. You want to talk about your boat business?
Not really.
I know. Kirby's having a bad week.
So my brother and I decided it would be a smart idea for us to start a boat rental business because there's
Okay, actually, I'm sorry. I'm going to take credit for this. This was my idea.
I mean, I think there's simultaneous creation, because it's not like it's like you said we should start teaching underwater basket weaving classes.
Right. No,
We
it's not like
own
I
a
came up with the
Airbnb.
idea. I was like, this is a major, beautiful lake that there's not.
There's like one place that you can rent a crappy pontoon.
Yeah. So I was like, opportunity knocks. Go do it, Kirby.
So we decided that we're going to get this going. So we each, put up half the money for this pontoon, drive to go get it. It looks amazing. Bring it back. And it is a 2-stroke motor, which
we've learned
are
Sucks.
notoriously finicky. So even when we could get it to run, it was not something that you could rent out to someone. Like you can't give them the instructions of like, okay, it only idles for a second, but as soon as it starts idling, slam it into reverse. And as long as you're going full throttle, it runs really good. But if you do stop to swim, you're probably going to need about 20 minutes to get it started again.
Yeah, you can't rent that out.
So we spent all of last summer dealing with this boat. And finally, at the end of the year, we get it back up to the repair shop. And they say, like, we've cleaned the carburetors, everything. We took it out on the lake. It works great. We winterized it for you. It'll run like a dream next spring. We're still questioning of like, even a 2-stroke that runs like a dream is not ideal for renters. So let's go buy a different pontoon with a 4-stroke motor, and then we'll see if we want to swap motors or just go with the new one. That was this past weekend we bought it. So on Monday morning, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, we go pick it up, drive it directly to the lake, start driving it around, and the motor is sputtering. And like as you're going at half power, it's going, so it's jerking you forward and back too. And they had told us it runs like a dream, and we'd already paid them. So we sit down after that and go, what the hell are we going to do?
We have 2 shitty boats.
We have 2 boats that we cannot rent. We are the worst boat rental business in the world. So we pulled the trigger on just
It's
going.
almost like you have no background in
We have
mechanics or boats
And
or motors.
We grew up on a lake, but we were farmers. Like we just took a kayak out. We didn't do anything. So we decided to return it. We just brought it back to the place that we got it from, and through some difficult text conversations with people who weren't great at communicating, eventually they wrote us the check back. So now we are on the hunt for a new boat, but we thought maybe that one they fixed last year is just going to work great. And maybe our problem is already solved and we just haven't put it in the water yet. So yesterday we took the other boat, the 2-stroke, out and thought this is going to be it. It's going to work. It never started. We got it in the water. It never started. And it was so windy that we were up to our chest in the water trying to push a pontoon that was trying to blow away from us back onto the boat landing.
Sounds like an absolute clusterfuck.
And 3 old people at the boat landing are watching us, and they're like, we thought about helping you, but that water looked cold.
So, but let's talk about why we made it a separate thing versus like you can rent the Airbnb and the pontoon comes with it.
Yeah. So
we pay extra through us.
Yeah. So we started a separate LLC just because we know when people are ranking the Airbnb, they're ranking the experience. So if they, say they rented for $400 a night and they rented the pontoon for $250, there's a couple things here. Psychologically, now they're all tying that expense together and they're thinking about how expensive this place is. They're thinking like, oh my God, this is $650 a night or $750 a night because they're including the pontoon rental in there. The other part of it is if they have problems with the pontoon or it rained for 2 of the 4 days they were there and they didn't even get to use it, but they paid for it. Now when they go to review, they're thinking, how is my overall experience with this Airbnb? That might be a 3-star experience. But if they had a great time at the Airbnb, we can't control the weather. We can't control that the pontoon sputtered out while they're in the middle of the lake. If that's on a separate company, you can give Brill Boat Rentals a poor review. And that doesn't really matter that much because people just need pontoons. But if you tank our Airbnb rating, that's serious money that could go.
Serious. So yeah, it's a journey.
We're learning as we go. So if anyone has a really good working 4-stroke engine with a pontoon with a nice layout, so it's not like the weird fishing ones, I don't like those.
They're fishing pontoons?
So like, how ours has all like the beds all the way around. Yeah. That's like a leisure layout for a pontoon. But there are fishing pontoons where there's like those single swivel fishing chairs on like posts, like 2 of them in the front, 2 of them in the back. So it's like a fishing pontoon that
See,
fits
look at all the
people.
things you've learned. Now I'm trying to also get Kirby to buy a Jeep Wrangler so we can do a Turo with it.
Which would be its own separate thing too for very similar reasons.
Yeah. So just living that dream life over here, learning about boats and wallpaper and backhoes and berms full of bees.
Definitely a bunch of bees in the dirt while trying to clear out lakeside berm. It's funny that we own all of the toys of like a wealthy leisure living people, but we only use them to try to make money and we don't get to enjoy them.
Yep, that is.
We've got 2 boats and a lake house that we don't use because we can't, because other people are renting.
One day, we're making these moves in our late 30s. So, like, when we're in our 50s, we can do something.
Yeah, it's very possible by the time the girls are off to college, we would own free and clear most, if not all, most of the place. And we would own the boats and we would have businesses that can keep running if we want, or if we want to shut it down and just live there, we could do it.
Yeah, there was a TikTok going around that was like, everybody should buy a house for their children when they're born. And they talked about how and by the time the kid goes to college, they can either sell the house for money or they can rent it out, or I don't know what the TikTok
I think that's a Dave Ramsey thing, but it's also one of those funny things of why didn't you buy a house for your kid when they were born? Because we didn't have money to buy a second house. Joking?
I know. All right. Any final thoughts?
Overall, the experience has been good. Kind of like I was saying in the prayer, while we were going through it, I was exhausted and frustrated and worried that I don't know how to do any of this. I, know a little bit about how to work a chainsaw and I can, do manual labor, but I was very nervous about the construction and all the figuring out and calling people and landscapers and all of that. But having done it, I learned a bunch of new skills, and it's one of the things I'm proudest of in my life was taking that leap and having to figure things out and realizing I can figure out more stuff than I thought.
And I learned that my ADHD is borderline needing medication.
Yeah, medication would cost a lot less.
Okay, well, thank you for doing this podcast episode with me.
Thank you for having me on.
And if you have any questions, shoot me questions. We'll answer them. But yeah, this was the way that we answered all the questions in the last year, being like, you own an Airbnb, right? Would you do it again? That's a loaded question. Let me
A lot goes into it.
record an episode for you. All right. So until next week, She Slayers. Bye.
Bye.